Hey guys, Luke here. Today I want to share with you how to get 35 to 40 grand from Wells Fargo. Now, with Wells Fargo, to do this play, it does require two businesses to do and will unfortunately result in two hard inquiries, but I'll tell you why it does require two businesses. So from Wells Fargo, I have primarily only seen when it comes to approvals per card to be at max 25K. Now, if you're wondering, Luke, if I get two 25K cards from two different businesses and that's 50K, and you are absolutely correct, but there is a limiting factor as to why that's not always super feasible for everyone, is because to get approved for 25K from Wells Fargo, I have seen that the business owner does require to have quite a substantial relationship with Wells Fargo, usually into the years, and usually or have a significant deposit of like anywhere from 30 to 60,000 in the business account, which for most people isn't quite feasible. A lot of people don't have cards with Wells Fargo, so it's not a super practical play. Now, if you have a substantial relationship with Wells Fargo and you can put a substantial amount of cash into your business checking account, then 25 grand on a card is in play. But for most people, it usually isn't. And the other way is that if you do have a substantial relationship with them, with a business account, I have seen with a client of ours, they have given them, 24K limits on a card. So usually, like I said, to get the higher limits with those cards, you do either have to, one, have a very long history with them, or two, you do need to put substantial amount of cash into the business account, or be running a lot of money through there for a substantial amount of time, which will give you the possibility of getting these higher limits. Now, for more average people who do not have these, outlandish relationships with Wells Fargo, we've seen approvals go upwards of like 20K per card. So that's kind of where I'm focusing on, is more people will have the ability to get 20K cards instead of 25. But if you do have a long relationship with them, then, that's perfect. You're now entitled to upwards of possibly 50,000. But like I said, for everyone else, the other play that I personally recommend is to get a business account and drop 10K into the business checking account. Now, like I said, since we are now focusing on two businesses, what we are also going to want to do in this same run is start another business checking account for LLC2 and drop a lower amount of money, so maybe 1 to 2 grand, maybe more if you have it. Of course, the more money you can have in these bank accounts, the better, but at least have, about 10K in the other account, and then on the other one, have about 1 to 2,000, because the cool thing about Wells Fargo is that the substantial amount of money that you've put into one account can transfer over to the other businesses. So this is now giving us the option to not have to put so much money into the other business checking account as maybe with some other banks. So by putting a lot of money into this account, it will then transfer over to business number 2. Now, once we have set up these bank accounts and we've put our 10K or, hopefully 10K, maybe more if you can, into LLC 1's checking account, and we've done, the 1 to 2,000 in LLC 2, then we can now start going on and applying for the business credit. Now, we want this money to season for at least 2 weeks. Of course, longer the better, but at least 2 weeks we want to let this money sit into the account. And I forgot to mention this, but before we apply for anything, we do want to make sure that we have at least a 740, or we want to be primarily at a 740 FICO score before applying. That, in today's market for getting business credit, 740 is now kind of the standard. You need at least 720. That will get you into the door, but 740 and plus is where you're really going to see good returns on these applications. So I just wanted to throw that out there. And the card we're going to be focusing on is the Wells Fargo Signify card. It is 0% for 12 months. And with Wells Fargo, they will primarily pull Experian. They can pull TransUnion, but primarily Experian. And in the rare sense, I personally have not seen this, but I've seen other people say it, that they can pull Equifax, but they will primarily pull Experian, and possibly they will pull a TransUnion. So either or. But those are the two primary bureaus that they will pull. But it's good just to check, in your state and region, wherever you live, to just figure out what bureau that they are going to hit, just so whenever you're building your funding plan, you're not targeting one bureau too much. So what are we going to do? When we are applying for these cards, the data points that we're going to want to try, from what we have seen to work best, is around $465,000 in terms of revenue. Like I said, just in that range. If you're making more, wonderful. But for the no doc, we have seen around $465 to work really good, and to not require documentation and to get good limits. And now for personal income, we've seen around 145 to work really well. And this is a key point to remember for your businesses. Keep the income the exact same. So do not change the income. For both your businesses, you want to have the exact same income. Now, of course, you're going to have different revenue because, two businesses are never going to be making the exact same revenue. But you want to keep the income the exact same. Because if you don't, it's going to cause problems when you are applying, and it's possibly going to flag your application, and you're just going to be in a world of headache, and it's just no bueno. Don't do it. Keep the income the same. Now, in terms of in terms of employees, we've seen around 4 to 9 employees. The younger your company is, of course, lower amount of employees, and then the older it is, it is more realistic to have more employees. But 4 to 9 we have seen to work pretty good. Now, in terms of monthly spend, around $25K or more. So I wouldn't go much more than that, but around $25K to a little bit more, because with banks, the amount that you request, they usually will pull it down a little bit. So around 25, 30, maybe 35 max. I wouldn't really go much more past that, because if you keep going higher, it's just not going to look realistic. If your company is making a certain amount of money and you're just like, oh, my monthly spend, I'm estimating it to be this, it just looks like you're spending so much more than your business is making. So just make sure that these numbers, if you are, applying in, these aren't the numbers that you are currently at. Just to make sure it looks realistic, that if a human was looking at this, would they be like, okay, this is a business that's growing, but not a business that's just like overspending or has way too many employees. So it's good just to use a little bit of logic when you are going through these applications. Now, like I said, at the time of this recording, this is just what we're seeing. This is subject to change, but as of right now, this is what we're seeing work really well. So when you are applying for these cards, you want to make sure on the application to sign in to the business checking account that you have. So it'll say log into my bank. So on each application, you want to log in to your account. So make sure when you're applying for LLC 1, which is going to have, the more money in there, you're going to want to hit that application first. Log into your account, and it will pre-verify your information, which is really good, because banks, when you are applying for them, if you can have yourself pre-verified by, logging into your account, it definitely helps with the approval process, because you're already pre-verified with the bank. You already have a relationship with them. So do that. Once you submit that application, now you're on LLC 2, you log into your account, you're pre-verified, and you hit submit. That's what you want to do. Now, if you did not want to go, I kind of forgot to mention this earlier, but if you don't want to wait, 2 weeks and, use a substantial amount of money as like $10K or $12K, you can apply for Wells Fargo without an account, with a pre-existing account with them. You can just go straight into the application. I don't recommend this. to be completely honest with you. You can get approved, but you are really at the mercy of the bank because they don't know who you are. And you're really just now relying on your credit and stuff, which is a major factor, of course. But with this bank personally, they don't know who you are. So you're really kind of at the mercy of them, and it will result in lower amounts. You can still get a good bit amount from them, but it's not going to be, 30, 40 or above. So you can apply without a relationship. I just don't recommend it. That's just me personally. I've just not seen very good results with that. So I would stick to, at least 14 days. If you have a relationship, that's incredible. But just to kind of recap, if you have a relationship with them, you are now hopefully entitled to the $25K. But like I said, I've primarily seen that most people will sit around the $20,000 range with their cards. So what my recommendation, seasoned LLC checking account or LLC 1's checking account, put about $10K in it, let it sit for 2 weeks. At the same time that you're setting up that one for LLC 2, put like $1,000 to $2,000. Of course, like I said, more the better. Let that season with the other one for the same 2 weeks, same 2 week period. On your application, make sure to sign in to the account so you get pre-verified on the application. Once you submit that one, immediately go into the other business, apply, sign into your account, apply, hit submit. Now, the only time that you don't apply for the second LLC is if LLC number 1 gets denied. If it gets denied, something was wrong. You do not want to apply for the second LLC. You're going to get denied. You got to figure out what happened. So if the first one's pending or approved, I always recommend when I'm personally applying for things, I like to make sure that the first approval or the first application went through before I go for the second one. So I would personally call in to their application, to their business application status line, and just call them and just say it went to pending, and you're just wanting to inquire about it. And hopefully they will approve you on that call, and then you can go straight into the other application and ride that wave of approvals. Now, like I said, if it's denied, don't go for the second LLC. You're going to get denied. Now you've just got another hard inquiry that didn't need to happen. So 2 weeks, let them season, apply, sign into your account, make sure the income is the exact same. Revenue, like we said, 465 has worked really good. Income around 145. Monthly spend, I would do like 20 or do 25 to about 35,000, somewhere in that range. In terms of employees, 4 to 9 have worked really well. And then there you go. That is everything I have for Wells Fargo. I hope this helped. Like I said, before you're ever applying for these banks, just make sure what bureau are they going to hit on your credit report. Make sure your credit is clean, of course, on the business and personal side. What I mean on the business side is that some cards will report, like Chase Ink cards, they will report to Experian Small Business. And these banks like Wells Fargo, they will sometimes look at Experian Small Business and they see that you have substantial amounts of debt with these other banks. It can, influence their decision with their approvals with you. So it's always just good to make sure when you're going through these funding rounds, like if you do have cards with cards within the same business, to make sure that maybe they're paid down as well, because they could see that limit if that bank does report to Experian Small Business. And this is where having two businesses works really well, because you can diversify the debt onto two businesses. So like LLC 1's debt, if it's reporting to Experian Small Business, LLC 2, when you're applying, the banks can't see what you have on LLC 1. They're only going to see what you have on that LLC that you're applying for. So that's just something to consider. I've never really seen people have too much problems, but you could, and I just feel like I owe it to you all to let you know that that can happen. So that's everything I have for you all. I hope you all have a good one. Take care. Bye-bye.